Monica, thank you so much for hopping on today with me as a fellow realtor, fellow call group agent, but also both of us living in that educator space years and years ago.
Yes.
So thank you for being a guest on Educators Unleashed and sharing that story with our viewers.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. So if you would just kind of start with your teacher and just kind of talk to the group about just kind of what that was like for you.
Sure. So I taught preschool for 7 years in Apex, half day. So a little bit different than maybe most of your traditional classroom teachers. My objectives were definitely different, but loved the work, loved working with kids. But at some point, each year in the spring, my husband and I kind of started talking about what the paycheck looked like and what our needs were as a family and how long we could afford for me to do this type of job and when it was going to be time to actually go back full time.
So it sounds like that you were staying part-time because your daughter was younger. Is that kind of what you were
Yes.
just kind of
So I started teaching when my daughter started kindergarten. Up until that point, I had stayed home. And so it was great because it was part-time, allowed me the flexibility to go into her classroom and do some things. I was there when she got out of school every day, which was important for me when she was younger. So it did allow me that flexibility, but it wasn't bringing in as much income as we were needing.
So like you probably, and like me, when we were kind of contemplating, we're in education, there's just I was having the same conversations with my husband as well. There was probably a bazillion other careers that we could have gotten into, right?
Right.
So the biggest question is that shift, why real estate? And how did you even go from teacher to real estate? I would love for you to share that story.
Sure. So I'll be honest and say I didn't know that much about real estate. We had owned a home previously several years ago in Atlanta. We owned our home here. So I had been through the home buying process. Wasn't something I had considered for myself though. But I was definitely looking at going back full time, have a degree in biology and chemistry, but I haven't used it for several years. Hard field to break into when you haven't actually been working in it. And also just when we talk about going back full time, I wasn't really ready to give up some of that flexibility to be able to do things with my daughter or be able to go into her classroom or do volunteer things that I had been doing. We had a friend that we knew through soccer, through my daughter's soccer team, that at one point mentioned needing a real estate agent for the team. And I was like, oh, I'm looking for a full-time job. I could do that. And he said, Monica, you would be great at it. Teachers make the best agents. People love you. I could totally see you doing this, but you don't have a license. I can't hire you. And so, went home, didn't think another thing about it until we saw him a couple of weeks later. And he's like, did you get start your real estate classes yet? Like, no. And saw him again a week later. And he's like, you really should sign up. He's like, I can't hire you right now, but I think you should consider it. So I did, Sorry,
I'm sorry, but just real quick, just for viewers who are watching. So what was that process from I signed up to I got my real estate license? Just
sure. So first I did some looking into it, right? Because I had no idea what
that's who you are.
And what's the end point? What happens after you get your license? Where does it all go? And so it was spring at the time. And so I ended up, when the school year was over, I started real estate classes. I took my classes at night. This was pre-pandemic, so you had to actually attend class in person. So I had to work it around when my husband was home so I could go, and so I took class from 6 to 10 at night. I got my license in August. School had started back by that time. I did not jump right into real estate. I continued teaching and knocked out. So you have 90 hours of post-licensing. You have 3 post-licensing classes in North Carolina with real estate. I knocked all those out on the weekends from August to December and was fully licensed by December. Still was not working in real estate. I waited until the following summer when I was out of school to actually join a firm, hang my license, and start attempting to do real estate work. But by that point, I had all my education out of the way. You don't have to do it that way. That's just how I chose to do it.
But I also love the way that you did do that. It's, you kept your job, you were able to get your license, educate nights and weekends, very similar to how I did. And it wasn't like it was, all or nothing, right? You can, that's the beautiful thing about it is you can get the education done while you're doing something else and dip your toes in at whatever feels most comfortable to you, I suppose.
And now, from what I understand, so much of it's online. You don't even have to physically go to a classroom to do it.
You don't. So Monica, talk to me a little bit about how you felt, right? So I guess, for people who just quit their job and go all in, that's one thing, but for still having, and you and I have had these conversations, we
Right,
still had that steady paycheck, right? We weren't giving that up quite
right,
yet,
right.
but kind of just talk to me about what the hesitations could have been, you could have been feeling changing your career, and just the fear factor really of what in the
Sure.
world am I doing?
And I absolutely had a fear. I'm my personality, I'm just not great. I don't jump into change. I definitely have a comfort zone and I like to stay in it, which is a whole nother topic with how that works in real estate, which is not well. But yeah, change is hard. And I wasn't unhappy where I was on many levels, right? I loved the kids. It was fulfilling in many ways. It wasn't fulfilling paying my bills, but it was definitely a work of art and I loved it. So that part was hard to think about stepping away from, right? I almost felt like I was letting people down, if that makes sense. And especially in a preschool environment, there were families that I had their older kids or two of their older kids, and there was another one coming behind them that I knew was going to come through my classroom. And so there was a emotional part of leaving that job that was really tough. But I will say too, real estate takes a little while sometimes to get going. And once I got in my groove and business started happening, I was still in the classroom and found out really quickly I can't do both. And I'm not saying other people, you can't do it part-time, maybe you can, but when I was in a classroom and I was in charge of 10 or 12 little people, I couldn't be walking out to answer my phone to let my client know that we didn't get the house or we did get the house and you need to make a decision in an hour. You can't manage both when you're in charge of a group of children. And so there came a time once the business took off that I really had to step back and say, okay, which way am I going with this? Am I going to go all in, or am I going to step back, because I can't juggle both like this?
So I hear that so often. That's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing this series. It's how I felt as well. It's this emotional pull, this emotional tug on families and children that we've met and we have relationships with. We are part of their lives. I'm still faced. Kids that I used to teach are now getting married and having children, right? And I'm
Right.
still part of that. And I mourn sometimes that I'm not meeting other families like that, right? And I don't have
Right.
those relationships. So, and you might not have the answer to this, but can you remember then, when was that moment where it was, because for me it was, but now it's my family's turn. It's not other people's family's turn, which is even still hard for me to say today.
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
But today I'm choosing me and my family. And do you
Yeah,
know like what that was, or what the moment was, or what the thing that you wanted, the place you wanted to go, the vision you saw for your family, if you can share a little bit about that.
I don't know if I can pinpoint a moment that I felt like this is what now I have to do this as far
Mhm.
as for my family. I think mine might be more of a reflection. Once you have to consider, I didn't work when we had moved overseas before I had my daughter, and the way my husband's job was structured, we were not allowed to get spousal visas to work overseas. So I had quit my job and we had gone overseas. We had our daughter while we lived there and we moved back here and I stayed home until she started kindergarten. I've always worked in the past, so that was new for me. So I hadn't worked for several years. Then I worked part-time, which helped, but it wasn't a full income, right? And so I think mine was more reflective when I actually started making money. I personally, I wasn't just mom anymore. Like I was contributing to our family. I was contributing, I always contribute. I was run the household, do all the things, right? But now I actually felt like, oh, I'm paying for these activities, or I'm paying for vacation. Like I'm actually contributing towards what we're doing with our family, whether it be bills, whether it be something fun like a vacation or a treat that we get. But I think mine was more after the fact, reflective, like, oh, okay, I'm making a difference. Like I'm actually doing something here. And now
Oh,
as time has gone on, my daughter has gotten older, you travel, soccer, all the things that kids cost money, and the older
Yes,
they
they
get,
do.
they cost money in different ways. And now they're
Yeah.
driving and all the things. And I look at it, and I can look at it and say, okay, if I didn't sell a house, we still have a house to live in. Our bills are paid. But the travel soccer, my daughter's car, there's a lot of things that I'm like, how would we make that happen if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now? Looking back on that salary that I made teaching, there's a lot of this that couldn't, how would we do? There'd be a second job somewhere, and something different would be happening.
Absolutely. So you touched on something that your friend had said when he said, "Oh, Monica, you would be a great real estate agent. Teachers make the best real estate agents." So what
Yes.
do you think are those transferable skills from being a classroom teacher to then being a successful real estate agent? Because what I haven't shared, and I'm remiss in sharing, that you're a very successful real estate agent.
Thank you.
You have just changed the lives of many, many people. And what Monica is so beautiful about is the relationship building that she does after she closes on a house. And that's what I love about your business, is that it doesn't stop at the closing table. So if you could just kind of share what you think are your top skills.
Is that part of being a teacher? I think part of it, teachers are patient, or the good teachers are at least,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That job requires a lot of patience, and real estate does too. And it's not, I don't mean just with clients, but you're having other agents and your vendors, and things do not go on your timeline. You are in your classroom, you at least maybe are kind of in control, or you like to think you are. In real estate, you're not in control of anything. And so you have to have patience with the process, with the people, all of it. And so I think patience plays a huge role. I think teacher, what are you doing? You're teaching, you're going through a process, you're explaining things more than once usually. And I think that's a huge part of our job. We are guiding people through a process, right? It's a sales job, but I'm not selling people anything. I'm guiding them through a process, advising them the best I can, and trying to make it as smooth as possible to get to a positive finish. And so I think as a teacher, you have those skills. You are used to teaching people and going through a process and reminding them and helping them do it again. And okay, step back and try it. Let's try it again, and try to how we can change it to make it better. I think a lot of that goes into real estate. And for me, that relational aspect, it's not just a transaction to me. It's, and not everyone does real estate this way, and that's perfectly okay too. But I'm that person that after closing, I know the kids' names, I know the dog's name, I know the family. Especially if we've looked at multiple houses together and it's been a little bit longer process, I get to know you. And I think in another way, it relates to teaching, maybe not in a positive way, but the kids leave your classroom and move on, and it's bittersweet because you're happy that they're growing, but you miss them. And it's kind of the same when a family closes. I'm so happy they got the house they love, but I don't see them anymore. Like, it's over. They got their house, they move in, you don't see the house after, you heard all their dreams for the home and all the things they're going to do, but you don't really see any of that most of the time, and you don't hear anything else about them. So I do try to keep, I'm not knocking their door down, but I do try to keep in touch periodically just to see how they're doing and see if they made those changes they talked about.
That's awesome. So 2 more questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
If you could really just kind of talk about and share one area that you have really grown as a human, as a woman, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as a working mom, that perhaps you would not have had the opportunity to do had you not gone into real estate. So you think of Monica, preschool teacher, Monica mom, right? And then you become Monica now. Part of that identity is realtor. So what's the one area that you feel like you've really grown in, either because you had to, right?
Right.
Just naturally happened.
I think that's a tougher question. Strength, and I don't mean physical strength, but just when you're in a classroom full of kids, you're the adult, they're obviously going to listen to you, whether they don't even know if you know what you're talking about or not, but you're the adult in the classroom. In real estate, you have to earn people's trust. They have to trust you, so you have to come across confident. And it's funny that I'm in real estate because I have always tended to be more quiet, reserved type person. And so I've had to learn to really how to project that confidence, even though if I was already feeling it, but how to let other people know that it's there, that I am confident, I can guide you through this, I can take care of you. And one of my very first transactions that I ever did in real estate, the client said at one point, it was one of our very first transactions, and the appraisal came in low, pretty low, like enough that it was going to be a big problem. And later in the transaction, after we got everything worked out, my client said, I didn't know Monica had that in her. He's like, he said, I like how you treat us, but I liked seeing that side of you, because we had to negotiate pretty tough to get them in the house when it was all said and done. And so I think just letting that side come out a little bit more, I'm still kind, but being able to show
Very
that
kind. Yes.
but letting that side come out and show my confidence and be willing to, I don't know if you'd say step on toes, but be willing to get out of my comfort zone to make things happen.
Absolutely.
I think definitely a big step for me.
Cool. And the last question, anyone who's watching this, anyone who is perhaps an educator, or maybe they're in another job and they are just kind of feeling, okay, I'm helping this group of people, but I want to help myself, want to help my family, that sort of thing. Any advice, any words of wisdom? What I love about you, Monica, is you are completely authentically honest. It's not easy, like you've said. You don't have to take it fast, like you said.
Right.
Change is hard, like you said. People would say you don't have the personality for real estate, all the things that stories that we say in our heads, right? To say that we don't want to make the change, whatever that change is. So do you have any advice, or like I said, words of wisdom that you could share with somebody who perhaps is where you were, 15 years ago?
I think part of it is how it was presented to me. If someone had said, oh, real estate, it's a sales job, you would do that, and I would have never tried it. If someone had presented it to me that way and said, this is a sales job, you have to do ABC, I would have probably never even looked into the classes. But it was presented to me by someone that said, you would be good at this. You would be good at this because, and told me, that I had a trait or features that would make me good at it. And so that's what brought me around to it. So I would say to people, don't pigeonhole yourself, first of all. But I'm also not the one that's going to say, go for it because you can do it. Yes, you probably can, but I'm that one that I had to do my research first. I had to check into it. And in doing your research, understand there are costs involved. So maybe it does work for you to do it in the way that I did and kind of keep your paying job while you do the classes and figure out how you're going to make it all work. Because that first month of real estate, you don't have a steady paycheck coming in. But you're paying money out because you're joining the MLS, you're doing all these things. So there's bills before there's income. So I do think, me personally, I wanted to be educated about what I was getting into, but I definitely think, don't think you can't do it because you presume it to be a certain thing. I think find you a McKinsey, find you someone that can, someone that can tell you about the day-to-day, that can tell you what maybe, especially if it's someone that knows you, what you do well, or what skills you currently have that you could bring to the field, and just the truth about, okay, here's what you need to be prepared for the first couple of months. Here's what it looks like. Here's what you're going to be up against, but here's what can happen.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Monica, thank you so much for coming on our Educators Unleashed. I have been very fortunate to get to work with you every day and to see you on our team, and the team routes that everybody has to do. And so here's to leaving the classroom and kicking butt, lady. Yes. We love having you. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.